I actually was stumbling over the words to say hello, and I usually say good morning because I record in the mornings on Wednesday, and welcome you to my YouTube channel. I'm Norma Cowie, but this afternoon it's an afternoon, so good afternoon from me. And why it's an afternoon is because I'm recording this a day early, because tomorrow I have to take a friend an hour north to a different hospital for some hand surgery. So I'm driving her up and I'm driving her back. And hopefully having some time to go look at Costco, of all places, but we don't have one in our town. So I have a feeling that's where I'm going to go. Spend a little bit of time just to check some things out. So welcome to my YouTube channel and my Wednesday talk. And even in this morning, I wasn't sure what my topic would be today. And often I'm very clear. Excuse me, it comes out very clear. Okay, we're going to talk about this. This has been brewing for a while because a lot of people don't really understand the work I do. They'll hear me refer to my psychic tarot card readings, past life regressions, etc. And I just wanted to explain a little bit of my journey because we all have journeys. If I would have thought where I would be in relation to my life when I was 20 years old and started to read tarot cards, I would have not comprehended it at all. I was a young mother. I was working. Well, actually, after around 22, I started working because I'd had my second child, and my husband then was going to go back to university. And so I went to work, and we worked together to get him his degree and finally a teaching job. We moved from where we were into a town called White Rock, where I lived for over 30 years, or in the vicinity of White Rock. And then life had changed a lot for me, but it's the growth journey I wanted to really touch on. When I was young, and I mean quite young actually, I used to wonder what God was about. And I used to wonder, was there a God? And one of the reasons why that came up was because from the age of 3, I went to Sunday school. Some girls down the street, they took me off to Sunday school. Well, I think my mother was quite happy with that. And so I had heard about God. And then in the middle of that, when I was about 12 maybe, I changed churches from the original church I went to. Maybe I was only 12 actually, and I went to the Methodist church, which was quite different as to how they did their Sunday schools and things. And I learned about Jesus being a carpenter, and I learned all sorts of things that for somewhere in my brain had not comprehended before. And I found it was a lot more fascinating and interesting. But there again, my mom asserted her a little bit of power that she actually had. And I went back and at 15 got confirmed in the Anglican church. And so I then stopped going because I had started to work. I went to work at 15 and I was still wondering what God was about and how it fitted. And I also played field hockey, which I absolutely loved. Now at 14, I'd taken a really bad fall on the tennis court and hurt my lower back, which has been an issue pretty well since I was 30 on. But it was like, so I was a sporty person who sat working on a typewriter for 8 hours, nearly 8 hours a day. And by the weekend, I was tired because I played a lot of sport on the Saturday, playing field hockey for a good hour or more. And then a little bit older, there was dances to go to and having a little bit of fun. Then I met the man who was to become my husband, who was a traveling Canadian, which is how come I ended up here in Canada. And I ended up coming up here. We had 2 children. He went to school. I went to night school. I educated myself through night school 2 times a week, going and learning, and ended up getting my grade 12 because at 15 you haven't completed your high school. And then I went on to college. And then in between that time, I had learned how to read tarot cards. Now I was so fortunate, and I have been fortunate in my life. And I'm sure if you look around your lives, you'll see that all of a sudden you're at the right place at the right time, or you reconnect with somebody that's there that makes a difference to your world. I was, we were living actually in a basement suite with my daughter at the time, and the next door neighbors were a young couple who were going off to hear meetings. And so they invited us along because my ex was very, very interested in astrology. So we went off and started going to these weekly meetings while my mother-in-law looked after our daughter. Now, there was this gentleman by the name of William Boulderstone, who was a British medium who'd had a heart attack. He was given some tarot cards, and which he did not want anything to do with because mediums didn't read cards, that's for sure. And in that time, remember, this is a lot of years ago. And so his guide came to him. His guide is the person that works with him and talks to him and has helped him with his work, and said, you're going to devise a new method of reading these cards, which he had done while he was recuperating from his heart attack. So I was fortunate enough, with many others, to be part of his first class of learning how to read the tarot his way. And I studied with, off and on, because he didn't always have classes, but off and on for 3 years. And then a group of us kind of left. We didn't like what all of a sudden things were changing. As a teacher myself, I know how that happens. All of a sudden you have a piece of new information, or you add something, or you see something and you add that, and you're not doing things the old way, you're changing it a little bit. And I know that has happened to me. And I know sometimes some of my students haven't necessarily liked where all of a sudden the direction I've taken. But because of those 3 years, I had a basis of how to read the cards. I had a basis about how he had changed what was traditional method of reading them. And from there, I kept going. I ended up working at a metaphysical bookstore, again, running into someone who'd studied with me. He was teaching yoga at the bookstore. They needed a tarot card person. Oh, by that time we had moved to White Rock. He said, I know the person for you. That connection with the bookstore and becoming the tarot card teacher first and then reader, that was the beginning of my whole life changing. There's no doubt about that. Because from that point, my, you might say, psychic career, my spiritual career, everything began to alter and change and grow. I began to do, I love teaching anyway. That's one of the things I've always loved doing. And then when I began doing readings, I was also working and raising kids. You have lots of energies in your 20s, and this was getting closer to my 30s, but you have a lot of energy. This ended up creating a sense of purpose. I began also organizing. I had a store at one point, I began organizing other psychics, putting them in malls, going into fairs, doing different things. So that organizational part of me started also. So what happened to my own growth at that point was pretty well, I was busy with kids, with work, with relationship, etc. But still, I had lots of energy, I had lots of awareness, and I was still working on putting things together, observing, watching. In 1979, I wrote my first tarot book, Tarot for Successful Living, which sold very, very well. And when I was producing them. And then I wrote my second book a few years later called Patterns of the Tarot. And then I wrote another book, which wasn't that long ago, called Pathways of the Tarot. But in between, I wrote other books based on what I was learning and doing. The Secrets for Living Happily came first. This was all the information I had gathered from the tarot without tarot cards that I put in this book. You might call it a booklet, a little book. And how to live happily, I thought people would really want to know how to do that. And I like it. I still actually have some copies, and I give them to people who come for readings when I see that they really haven't understood how life works. And I find that it's a very, very good little booklet. Then, because I was doing a lot of ghost busting, I wrote a book, The Ghost I Took Home, which is true. I actually did that before I released him. And I had a lot of experiences. So I record those in the ghost I took home, as I'm talking about what to do with the different energies. When I began to work with understanding how we freeze in time inside, and how what I call we have a frozen emotional children and adults, because we can freeze with any time, it doesn't really matter, but it was basically we're dealing with, because the inner child was really big at that time. And I realized that I had lots of frozen children inside. And so consequently, to make a long story short, I wrote a book called Connecting to the Light, which talks about how we freeze in time, number one, and number two, how we can unfreeze that by connecting to this universal love light, and how the love will take whatever we're frozen into, whatever emotion or whatever thought, whatever belief. And that has become a very big basic for the work I do today. I also wrote a book about my past lives. I spent a number of years trying to figure out how to write a book on my past life regression. And then one day it came to me, write about all the ways I'd found different lives, and which I did. And it's called Many Lives and Many Ways to Remember Them. And the past life regression technique that I had studied 2 different techniques from 2 different people. And yet one day this other technique came into me. And it's how it was. It came. It's quite a story, but I won't bore you with it at the moment. But there was this technique. It's really meditational. And I've used it still to this day. I have a CD on it. I had lots of things about past lives. Past lives played a big part. So we had the inner frozen children, and then we had the past lives information that I had gathered. Now, this happened over years. It didn't happen. Some of the insights were overnight. Some of them were absolutely instantaneous. But also I have one more book to talk about, and that was the spiritual principles of wealth, because I was very, very interested in that. I also learned later that there's some other aspects. And I know in some of the other videos, I've talked about bits of this. So what is the work I do today? My work basically breaks down into 2 parts, I would say. One part is the psychic tarot card readings. The odd time I will do past life regressions for people, but it's mostly when you look at my calendar of what I'm doing, we're doing either half-hour or 1-hour psychic tarot card readings. Now, tarot card readings to me is an identifier. We identify where you are, where you're going, and what's happening. So a person has a good idea of what's going on. Plus, what I do is give instruction, but I direct them if they want to make a change, if they need their lives to change or to understand, then how to do that. And that's what I love about the tarot, is because it consistently doesn't leave you stuck. Well, this is how it is. It's about, this is how it is, and this is what you can do to change that. So a lot of my readings are people who are kind of stuck a little bit, and word goes out, if you come and see me, and by phone or Zoom or in person, I can help you understand how you can make a change. But then the work that is the closest to my heart are these energy transformations that I do. Now, when people come to see me and have card readings, very often it will point that they have some very big obstacles in their lives. Maybe their personality in a way, maybe a behavior, or a belief system. And again, over the years, excuse me, I started with the past life regression. I began to become aware that with the inner child stuff that I was doing, that we can shift and change things. And yes, in the inner child process, it's an internal one, and the odd time I still will do that. But mostly now what I do is I have a sheet of all the different systems that we know of. Chakras, male, female, what I call cells, like most people are familiar with the high earth and shadow self, but there's many other kind of cells as well. So we work with those, but the delight is when it shows up as a block. So I've just got to back up a little minute here. When people come to see me for the energy transformation work, we decide Sometimes they tell me, I want this. And sometimes I sit down and we talk about where they're at. We decide the topic we're going to go in on. When I first began this, I just thought, oh, well, we'll just click, we can clear everything. But I found that didn't really quite work. Think of an orange, and you take the orange apart. There's all these segments, right? You take an orange segment. Well, that's kind of what I do, is we take a segment and we go in on that, and we find where the blocks are. What are the blocks? Now, what I love about this work, and this was an example because I remember this, because yesterday I had a first-time client in this work. I have not read, I had read briefly for her, but not really. It was just a mini reading I was doing. And I took one look at this, what she told me what she wanted. I figured out how we could go in to see. I found out where all the blocks were. And first thing I almost said to her, you've done quite a bit of internal personal work, correct? And she said, oh yeah. And she talked a little bit about something, not what she had done, but that she had been doing some work. It was obvious. And you might say, well, how is it obvious? And I've seen this before in several clients, actually, that have come to me after they've done other work. It's because they've done work. They've done a certain amount of clearing, what we call it, and certain systems. And based on the topic that we're looking at, it doesn't have any relativity to it because some of the work is done. But what it does, it brings in what I call the really deep stuff. So we go deep. We go into the contracts you have made with yourself or others. We go into the oaths that you've made where you've sworn or you've made an oath. Mostly it's about allegiance to a person or allegiance to an idea or something, but it's an oath. Usually has lots of emotion with that. You would have made a vow to, often when we go into spiritual, like usually nuns and monks and things come up a lot in the vows. When you make a vow to do a certain thing. Be poverty. People come, I can't seem to hold on to money. Well, then we go looking to see what's going on with that. Well, some other time, centuries ago, you made a vow of poverty. Why is that still applying today? Because the soul took that vow and doesn't always recognize time and space in that way. And something triggers in this life that triggers that vow that was in you before. And when we clear that vow, that makes room for you to be able to go and do things. Then there's the Akashic records. And this is doesn't always show up. Sometimes 2 or 3 different times when I'm clearing, someone makes a commitment to work a certain amount with me. We find that often the Akashic records usually will show up maybe second, and usually third time. Because I always call it, it's like there's a beach with all these little rocks on and we've cleared all the rocks and now we're getting down to the deep one that's way down below. And what is so fascinating in the Akashic records, most people, when they go to see an Akashic reader, I am not an Akashic reader. I don't sit down and say, okay, you've done this and this and this and you're going to do this, this and this or whatever. I look at blocks that are stopping you from creating what you're wanting to do now. What is stopping you from creating the world you want? All of those things become important. And so the Akashic records is no different. So what do I find? I find events that you've done. I find beliefs that you have decided that are ingrained, that do not support you in your life at this point in the direction that you want to go in. Now, interestingly enough, to me, to clear the Akashic records, we need self-forgiveness. And so I usually lead my client through a self-forgiveness. I'm going to use the word prayer. You could call it what you want. Declaration, an application. Because you need to forgive yourself. And this is one of the things that leaves me with great delight when I because we're getting near the end when we get to the Akashic record, is that they always say, oh, that just feels either lighter, better, different. I would say 99%, because I can't really say 100 because I can't remember everyone. I don't remember everyone at all. Now, they all make a positive comment about the end result of that forgiveness prayer. Because Something has weighted on the soul. It is a weight. Now, what kind of things have I run into? I recently, I had a person who felt guilty, because a lot of guilt often, because they ran slaves, not put them on boats to come to America or anywhere else, but they were running them up from down in Africa up through into sort of more Egypt way. But there was a lot of guilt about that. And the people go, oh my goodness. And well, okay, let's just work this out, because as I'm working, I find out what needs to be really forgiven. Sometimes it's a belief. I'm no good. What does that mean? I'm no good. Somewhere in there, you made a decision at the very root of your being that says, I'm no good. So no matter how hard you try, something comes back at you that says, see, it's not going to work, or it's not going to happen because you're no good. Now, what I find very interesting very often in these few things, which is the contracts, yeah, but the oaths, the vows, and the Akashic records, when I'm tuning in and I'll say something, I'll say, can you resonate with that? Invariably, I get a yes. I think that all the time. I say that. That happens to me, depending on whatever has come up, which is validation for me, because I'm just saying what I get. And then when it's cleared, they've got space in their lives to move forward. I've been incredibly fortunate in my life to be led, because I really believe that's what's happened a lot to me. I have been led in the direction of where I need to go and what I need to do. I have honestly tried several times to leave my work behind and go off and do something else. And each time it's not worked, and it's like, get back where you belong. And I haven't. And now I just accept. I remember having an argument with myself and somehow the director, you might say. And I finally said, okay, I just surrender. I'll do the work. And more joy has come into my life since then than you could imagine. It hasn't been easy at times, because not everything works the way you want them to work. But see, one thing the tarot taught me was, it's not the event that's important, is how you handle the event. And whoever is watching this, if you just know that if there's anything that you feel is blocking you, it can be cleared. There are many people like myself out there that are doing different technologies to be able to do it. Because it's what it is. It's a formula that we get. Been given my formula based on my experience, and I've always been taught, and I always say to people, I've always been taught, right from when I was quite young, voices in I would hear someone talking to me. I would imagine speaking to people. Thoughts were there. I was able to utilize them. And there are many other people like myself. We're not alone. It's not just me. My technique is me, and I've taught it to others, and then they often have adapted it to suit them, which is fine based on their experience. But if you want to find out more information about some of the things that I've done, or the books that I have, and the CDs and the DVDs, just go to my website, normacowie.com. You can email me through there quite easily. I also have a monthly newsletter, and usually early. I put it out actually yesterday for this month. And I just want to say I appreciate you. For those of you that have subscribed and come back, and those that leave comments, and those that press the like button, this is all new to me. It was a year ago, January, that even though I had the YouTube channel, that I sat down and said, okay, I'm going to start doing a talk. And I had been pressured internally to start this, and I've been putting it off because, oh, well, what have I really got to say? Well, I apparently have quite a bit to say. And so therefore I do like comments, and I do like questions as to what you would like to hear about, because I'm honest. I'll tell you if I don't know anything about it. There's lots out there I don't know anything about. But what I do know about is transformation. What I do know about is the love energy that is in this universe. What I do know about is how Mother Earth and Father Sky work together to have us work to be who we are. And what I do know is if you know how to work, the universe, whatever you want to call it, will respond. Actually, I'm just going to have one little short story because I had a phone call this morning from someone that a longtime client who had phoned me up and really stressed. And I talked to her for a little bit, gave her some direction, and she phoned me today to say it's just all opened up. And that's what we need. That's what we want. Sometimes it's just clarity as to where to go. We need to know, and we need to know how to ask for that. So I'm just asking you to please press the likes, the subscribe, the bits and pieces that goes on with this YouTube channel. And I know I'm a day early. It's Tuesday. I won't be, and so I'm going to put this up today because tomorrow is going to be a long, busy day. And just remember, there's also a Sunday Thought that comes out on Sundays. And now soon, we're beginning movie reviews because movies are coming back out. Thank you for watching. I sincerely appreciate you and wish you well. Have a good week.